Hi, my name is Stephen Llewellyn. I'm going to do my presentation for the International Sport Need Analysis. I chose to do rugby. I really like the dynamics of rugby as far as the training protocols, what's demanded, what's required. I've worked with a lot of sports, but never rugby, and it might be the one that combines the unique physiological and biological demands. So from here, we're going to get into the different pieces of this. And the first part we want to talk about is the physiological needs analysis. Rugby demands high aerobic capacity, repeated high intensity running, and power based strength. And if you look at the need as far as those categories, you need to be great in the back squat. You need to be fast in the 40. You need to have agility. You need to be able to move the bar fast, so power clean. You also need to be able to continue to put these efforts out. So the parts that I really focused on was the back squat. And what they found, you can see the numbers there. I'm not going to read them off, but what they found is that you really have to be able to move about 2 times your body weight. And for the 40, you have to be within about a 5-second range to be elite. It depends on if you're a back or a forward for all of this stuff, kind of like in any sport. It depends on what position you play, but you can see the guidelines there. For the agility test, the 505 change of direction is about 2.5 seconds on minimum. And then power clean, we want to do at least 1.2 to 1.5 their body mass. And then the aerobic capacity, the test that they found was maybe the most reflective was a yo-yo intermittent test. And they want to cover at least 1,600 meters and up to 2,400 meters. And those things just demonstrate all those pieces that you need to be able to do to be a great rugby athlete. Here's a field-based test, and what you want to do is essentially carry these out so you can get a reflection in numbers, and so going forward, you know what to plan for your particular athlete. For the biomechanical needs, again, these are kind of the similar protocols that we just talked about, but we're going to add the counter movement jump, and we're also going to add the squat jump. And you see the numbers there, but what we want to see is lower body power when we do those things. Also, relative lower body strength with a squat, which we already mentioned, and then upper body strength with a bench press. And those numbers are reflective of what an elite rugby player would need to present whenever we do those tests. The injury analysis, rugby it's a brutal sport. There's no shoulder pads or things like that. And due to high speed movements and contact, common injuries are hamstrings, knees, as far as ACL, MCL, PCL, shoulder, and then ankle injuries. And so some of the things that we might do in order to just screen for those injuries would be the hamstring extensibility. We want to see at least a 40 millimeter range in elite males for 90% knee flexion. We want to do the Y balance test to screen for ACL. As far as the upper body strength ratio, we want about 0.48 for shoulder stability, internal, external rotation. And then body composition from a 7-site skin fold, we want the lean mass index about 55 kilograms. And those are just, the ways we can look at what might present themselves as an injury. Of course, there's no way to avoid it, especially in a contact sport like rugby. Okay, so the case study that we were given, here are all the benchmarks and some of the strength and the weaknesses. Compared to the data, the athlete is, overall a little below where we would want for their squat. They're within the range, right there in the middle at 185 kilograms for the bench press. They need to work on that, so upper body strength needs to go up. Counter movement jump height is right in the middle within the range. Change of direction time is a little slow, so we need to bring that up. The sprint time, again, is a little slow. Not coincidence that the change of direction and sprint are correlated. And then for the next, the VO2 max, he's within the range, or she, I assume it's a male. And then percentage of body fat is 12%, which is in the upper limit. For me, as far as a contact sport, I'm not going to worry about that, especially because the VO2 max is in the right place. Now, where we might get in trouble with that is if we really need to bring that sprint time down, that body fat might need to drop so that the movements are more efficient through that sprint cycle. The goals, so how are we going to get from where we were on the previous slide, whatever is below the range or slightly weaker, how are we going to get there? So let's look at the strengths. First of all, lower body power is elite. Maximal strength in the lower body, the one rep max for squat is great. He has good force production. And like I said, the VO2 max is at the upper end with it being 51. That's, for rugby players, very good. The weakness is upper body strength. We have to get his bench press up, as far as injury prevention and also just being able to carry out the task that's required from a rugby player. His acceleration and top speed's not really there that we talked about. Change of direction's not quite there. That definitely could play a role as far as injury and just being able to be that elite rugby player. And then his body fat, like I mentioned, with it being at 12%, could reduce sprint velocity. It kind of depends on multiple factors, but that would be one thing we might need to address to be faster. So how are we going to assess? What are we going to do? One rep max test. It's very reliable. We know this. And so we know that those numbers are valid. The counter movement jump, great reliability. Change of directions, not quite as reliable as the other two that we mentioned. And then, the skin folds are a decent way to measure body fat. Definitely not the gold standard, but for our purposes, it will serve. So what do we want to do? We got to get better in the upper body pushes. Specifically, we have to improve sprint. Specific drills, we have to incorporate change of direction. We got to monitor body fat and then add plyo and power clean to maintain those good numbers that we do have. So number one, increase bench press to at least 130 kilogram by the end of week 6. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to do barbell bench 5x5, 85% of one rep max. We're going to rest for 3 minutes. And we're going to do a 3-second eccentric to an explosive up. We're also going to, within these 6 weeks, we're going to add in incline dumbbell bench at 4x6 with a standard lifting protocol with a 2-minute rest. The next goal would be to reduce athletes 40. We want to bring that down to at least 505 and get that elite benchmark. And how are we going to do that? We're going to improve the 40 by doing 10-meter flies. So the 30-meter buildup, 10-meter sprint. We want the max velocity. So we're with a stopwatch and we're giving them feedback, and he knows that number he's chasing. We're also going to do 20-meter crouch starts, and that's to really work on that explosive velocity going from 0 to 60, which rugby players need over and over and over again. But in this case, we're going to give them 4 minutes so that ATP is regenerated. And then lastly, we want to cut the change direction time down to at least 2.32 seconds by week 6. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do the 505 drill, and we're going to do it 4 times. Again, similar to the crouch and the fly, we want enough rest so that these are quality reps. And so we want over these 4 reps to be less than 2.5 seconds. And then we're going to do the L drill, which is a similar change of direction, but a little bit different setup and a little bit longer. So this is going to take about 6 seconds. And that's another one we can work on change of direction forward and backwards. So that's the gist of the program design, what we're going to do, how we're going to increase the force production, the rate of force development, and transfer that all to sport performance. But lastly, questions for you. And this is me being a novice, not knowing anything about rugby. I coached as far as training, a strength coach for basketball, for tennis, for football, for track and field, for cross country, for soccer. I might be leaving one out, but I've never done rugby. So what key metrics do rugby coaches look for when they evaluate talent? Is it they want the broad shoulders and narrow hips? Do they want the 40? Do they want the bench press? What is that thing they're chasing? Are there high school rugby teams? Because I only hear about the pros. The All Blacks obviously is maybe the most successful franchise ever for any professional league. And then if there is a high school, what else do they do? In America, there's a lot of football, baseball guys. If you're a quarterback, you're probably a pitcher. Also, there's a lot of cross country and track. There's a lot of tennis, and they might also play, volleyball in the fall. So what's that other sport they pair with? And then lastly, how often do rugby players typically lift? Do they have uh, a clustered schedule, or do they have enough time to get it in? So that's my